Hello. In this tutorial, I will show you the basics about how to apply textures and materials to your objects. Before start, you should have a previous knowledge about the basics of 3D Studio Max. For this, you can check my other tutorials on the webpage www.macrotutorials.com. First of all, you need to know that the color of the object is something different of the textures or the materials. The object color is the color that we or the program assigned to the object when it was created. A material is a way to imitate the real-world materials, adding textures and effects. So you can imitate the way how looks the wood, the water, the ground, a wall, or anything, just applying materials to your objects. A material is composed by textures and effects. A texture is just a simple digital image. Just a picture. Any picture in a format that 3D Studio Max accepts. The good thing is what 3D Studio Max can use a lot of types of pictures. But, I'll start showing you how to change the color of an object. The color of the geometry of the object is easy to change if you select one or more objects, and in the command panel, in the Create tab, is this square at the right side of the name of the object. Note that this square is the same color than the object that we did select. So, click on it, this window shows up. In this window you find 64 colors from the 3D Studio Max palette, or 240 colors from the palette of AutoCAD. Or, you can select custom colors. You can select any of those colors to be the new color of your object. Selecting an empty spot in the bar of custom colors and clicking on Add Custom Colors, you can select and adjust a custom color. Or choose one from the current scene using the dropper tool. Click here and click in the window over the object that has the color you want. Once you find the color, click on Add Color. And when you have selected the color you want, click OK. Now the object changes Add Color. Also, you can change the color from the Modify tab. Here is the button for the object color, C. If you render the scene, clicking on the Render button in the main toolbar, you can see that the scene looks very artificial. The materials gives a more realistic aspect of the scene. Before continue, you need to know that the way how looks the materials depends of the lights, the geometry of the object, the characteristics of each material and of the renderer options that you are using. Apply a material to your objects is really easy. Well, to apply a material, you need the material editor. You find the button to open it on the main toolbar. This button. Also, you can open it pressing the key M on the keyboard. In this window, you find the slots for the different materials. Below it, you find several options for set the materials. I will explain these options later in this and other tutorials. But, let's start with something very simple. So, select an empty slot clicking on it. And below it, you can set a name for your material. Just click and erase the default name. And type a new name. At the right side appears the type of material. In this case is a standard material. Exist a lot of types of materials, but let's start with this. Here is the ambient color, diffuse color and specular color. Ambient is the color for the zones in the object where the illumination is indirect. Diffuse is for the areas exposed to the direct light, and specular is the color of the light reflections on the object. But is easy to understand using an example. The ambient and diffuse color are locked by default, so click here and choose a color. For example, green. And here, moving this down, you have a lighter green, even white. And moving up, you have a darker green. And you can play with these values to set the color you want. If you are familiarized with photo edition programs like Photoshop, you probably use the RGB options to define a color. This means the quantity of red, green and blue to define any color. And in 3D Studio Max you can set the color this way, or just pick a color in this palette. And click on OK. If you increase the specular value, change the intensity of the light reflections. This light reflections. C. Changing the glossiness value, change the size of the light reflections. And, changing the soften, you can make softer the specular effect. You can play with these options until you get the results you want. You can see the results of these changes in the sample slot. To apply the material to your object, you can click on the slot of the material and hold it down. Move over your object. And release the left mouse button. Is ready. Now the material is applied to our object. Now, you only can see 6 sample slots, but here you have more. With a right click, this list appears. At the bottom you can select if show 3 columns and 2 rows of slots, like now. Or 5 columns and 3 rows. 2. Visualize more sample slot at once. Right-click, or 6 columns and 4 rows. Well, I'm going to select this for a bigger view of the materials. Another way to apply a material is selecting one or more objects in the scene. You don't have to close the material editor to select the objects in the scene. Well, once you have the object or objects selected, click on this button Assign Material to Selection and is ready. The material is applied in our object. Render the scene. Clicking on Render on the main toolbar. The objects with materials looks better. You easily can copy a material, click and hold it down, while you drag it to another slot. And release the left mouse button. And, is ready. You can use this material as base for another without having to start all over again. If drag the material doesn't work for you, just right-click on the sample slot and make sure that the option of drag copy is enabled. Like this. Note that now the opacity of the copied material is 100. This means that the material is not transparent at all. If you decrease this value, the material goes transparent. But we can't easily visualize this. So, if you click on the background button, here. In the sample slot appear a box checked background, that help us to see how much transparent is our material. Now you can adjust the opacity level to make more or less transparent your material. And we can also change the color of the material. Remember, just click here. Select a color from the palette. And adjust the color as you want. Click in OK. Now apply the material to the object. Just click and hold it down while you move over the object. And release the mouse button. This message appears because we did copy this material from other, and we didn't change the name. If we choose Replace the objects with agreed material, change the material for this one. And if we choose Rename and change the name, the material is applied only in the object we want. As you can see in the viewport, the object looks transparent. If you render the scene, you can see better results. If you add a light in the scene, clicking on the Create tab on the command panel, choose Lights, and clicking this arrow, select Standard. Now click on OmniLight. Click anywhere in the scene. And note that the illumination in the scene changes. This is our light, you can move it where you want. And while you're moving it, the light reflections in the objects changes, see. You can add shadows to our scene, if you click on the Modify tab on the command panel while the light is selected. And enable the Shadows option. By default is the shadow map, that gives good results. And render the scene. This tutorial will continue. Find the second part of this tutorial in www.macrotutorials.com.